Got just two kidneys over here dissected, very similar to how you'll be dissecting the sheep kidneys when I'm done with this demo. And then we've got a kind of a urinary system here that shows most of the components of the urinary system as well as some of the reproductive system. It's a male here. We'll see some of that. So for the kidneys, we're looking at Roman numeral 2. Roman numeral 2, so it says, I think, something like sheep kidney and kidney model. You can also put human kidney, because it's a convenient list, and it's the same objectives. So when you look at this kidney, it's probably better than that one. It shows more things. Well, first of all, this one does show one thing that we probably should start with is the renal capsule. So here's a piece of it. See some of it? It's this outer membrane that used to wrap all the way around the kidney. It's been torn. It comes off pretty readily. You usually have to take it off to cut into the kidney. So there are no other renal capsules. Here you see it, it's just kind of like a collagenous membrane, dense, irregular connective tissue on the outside of the kidney. On the inside, as I think you know, there are 3 layers. So the outer layer here in a lighter brown is the cortex. Then it gets a little darker, and that is the medulla. And what you can see here in the medulla are these areas here. They look a little bit like a Chinese fan or maybe a scallop seashell. Those are the pyramids. So renal pyramid, renal pyramid. Sometimes you got to angle it just right so the light shines on it. Otherwise it might just look like all brown. But you can definitely see those seashell looking things, like a fan when you're hot. Those are the pyramids. Then the dark yellow, green, army green color is the pelvis, the renal pelvis. So cortex, the medulla with the pyramids, and then the deepest layer there where the urine ultimately collects, that's the pelvis. Then coming out of the pelvis is the ureter. That's the ureter, which will go to the bladder. Remember the slides with the lamina propria and the transitional epithelium and muscularis. Okay, so there's the ureter. The renal artery and vein not shown so well. We'll see then elsewhere. So this area of, oh no, they are shown well. Excuse me, they're right there. They're not colored though. You see the one below me, you'll see is colored red and blue. It makes it a little easier. They're not colored here, but let me back up. When you look at this kidney, this area here, this concavity is called the hilum. Other organs have a hilum. It describes this kind of concave shape that the kidney's kind of known for. And it is at the hilum that the ureter connects and these blood vessels connect. So we know the ureter, that's kind of easy. Let's set it to the side. Oh, by the way, this is the adrenal gland. That little mass. The adrenal gland, we see more adrenal glands over here. I'll show there's adrenal gland on top of this kidney from last chapter unit. Okay. This is called the hilum. Can you tell which one's the artery and the vein? They're not colored red and blue, but you already had the cardiovascular system. Can you tell the artery from the vein?
The bigger one, the
bigger
artery?
is the artery, I would think, and then the vein is the
Okay, so what do you think this one is?
vein.
It's firm, it's very circular, it's very muscular. This is the artery.
Really?
Yeah. Whenever you see two together, usually the vein is bigger. If you remember amounts of blood in where the blood is, way more blood's in the veins than the arteries because the veins are bigger, they're looser. The arteries are more tight, more high pressure, quicker blood flow. Veins more loosey-goosey, more lazy river, more blood. So anyway, and maybe if you were to feel this on a practical, you could feel it. Here's the, actually there's dried blood in there, that blackish brown stuff. Anyway, that's the vein. It's bigger in diameter, and you can that artery is just firm. The vein is just kind of like squishes. The artery is like bounces back. Okay, so anyway, we'll see some other ones that are a little easier, but that's not too bad. That's pretty doable. So maybe we could just review real quick Roman numeral 2. The hilum is the concave area of the kidney. Then we have the cortex, the medulla, and the pelvis. Pretty clear on that kidney. It often is like the texture. It all looks kind of brown. But if you come a little close and you can look, you can see those 3 layers. Then the renal pyramid, which is part of the medulla, they look like little seashells. They're quite noticeable there. Okay, major and minor calyx. We haven't seen a calyx yet. There's nothing here. We'll see them on the sheep kidney. Now let me make it clear. On the models, which is also that list, you have to know major and minor, and hopefully you've known that by now because you've been studying. You know, that's first model you studied has major and minor. When we see the sheep kidney, which also has calyx, you won't have to say major or minor. You would just have to say calyx. So I don't know how you want to denote that. So on these specimens, nothing on calyx. We can't see. On the sheep kidney, you'll see a calyx, but you can't really tell if it's major or minor. I don't even know if sheep have major and minor. Maybe they just have calyx. But on the models, you not only have to know calyx, you have to know major or minor calyx. So I don't know. Try and make it work on the blue sheet as best you can, just so you're clear about what's expected. I'll show you the calyx real quick. So when you look at a sheep kidney and you see the 3 layers nicely colored, you get the cortex, the medulla. The calyx are these extensions of in the pelvis. See this kind of extension? Look at the pelvis has these like horns sticking up. See these horns, these white extensions of the pelvis? That's a calyx. It's pretty clear. Is everyone seeing all that? Let's see. So here's the pelvis, but then this thing and that thing, those horns, they look like horns poking out. Those are calyx. And again, whether it's major or minor, it's can't really tell with those parts. Just calyx for the sheep kidney. You'll see a lot of kidneys, whether it's models or this kidney or that kidney. Of course, whatever I'm asking will be visible on that particular specimen, so you should be able to name it. Renal capsule is that membrane on the outside, which you see bits and pieces of because it's always torn to get to the other parts of the kidney. Renal artery and vein, we saw it here. You gotta know your vessels. Again, the artery is the smaller, more circular one, and the vein is the larger, more oval. And if you were to feel them, which you can on a practical, squish it, squeeze it, the artery will be firmer and not squeezed so easy. The ureter is pretty easy to see. It's this long extension coming out of the hilum. Not to be confused with the artery and the vein, but it shouldn't be confused with the artery and the vein. And then renal papilla and column, you see you have that one star there, means up above, kidney model only. So we won't see those here. They just don't show up so well. Urinary system specimen. Okay, so for this buddy, we're going to flip the paper over and look at the very bottom piece where it says human cadaver. If you want to put specimen, okay, fine. It's not just the cadaver, it's the specimen as well. We'll see the cadaver next week, so we got a lot going on next week. Please try and be here, because these are the things you either see them or you don't see them. We've got pig uterus, we've got bull testicle, we've got cadaver, we've got the slides to go through. Some kinds of stuff. So here you see a lot of organs, including, starting with these 2 kidneys. Right? 2 kidneys. We're going to have to add on to that list, everybody. I know people don't like to add on, but these are easy. So adding easy stuff is, I think, good for you. See these 2 vessels? This one's flimsy and flat, and then there's this plump, thicker one. Anyone know what these are? What's this one? Very good, very good. Inferior vena cava. See, look at the vein. It's all collapsed, weak, flimsy. Okay, then what would this one be? This big, thick, heavy-duty one with a lot of red thread on it. This is the inferior vena cava. Superior will be above the heart, way up here. This is the aorta. Okay. This might have been an aneurysm. It looks a little bulgy, and maybe, I don't know if this was cut open or if it busted open, so to speak, like an aneurysm. Probably was cut, but it looks a little swollen. Anyway, these are the 2 things to write down: inferior vena cava and then the aorta. I know it's kind of old news, but integral to what we're looking at here. So if this is the inferior vena cava, and here's the kidney, what's this?
A heart?
Renal vein.
Oh, God.
Renal vein. It's the vein coming from the kidney going to the inferior vena cava. Renal vein. And then, the next question's going to be, what's on the other side, coming from the aorta to the kidney, what would this be? The renal artery. There's a renal artery over here too. It's just, it's kind of buried in there. So look at the vein, how flat and flimsy it is compared. Those are the arteries. See how round and muscular? So here's a vein, a piece of the vein, flat, flimsy. There's a couple branches of the artery. Okay, so renal artery, renal vein. We know that. Oh, just a blast from the past. There's the celiac trunk. There's the superior mesenteric under digestion. The inferior mesenteric. They're not on the list. I won't add them. Probably should have seen these last time, but anyway, now you're seeing. Then the ureters, like suspenders here. Howdy, partner. Okay, so there's the ureters. They're nice and easy, long, easy to see. These would be the iliacs, by the way, which we're not talking about that. So anyway, you follow the ureters on down to this structure. Where do the ureters go? The bladder. It's very small, I admit. In fact, only half of this is the bladder. The top half that I'm kind of holding on is the bladder. That bottom lumpy thing, what's under the bladder? If this is the bladder that I'm holding, what's right under it? By the way, it's a male. This bulgy thing looks kind of like a beer belly, or it's kind of bulging out. What's this thing right under the bladder? So this is the bladder I'm holding now. What's that lumpy thing? Kind of not supposed to be that big. The bladder's supposed to be bigger. This thing's supposed to be smaller. But what's right under the bladder in a guy? The prostate gland. So this is the prostate gland. There's the bladder, there's the prostate gland. And I know maybe I'm talking a little bit ahead of you, but I think we're supposed to be into male reproduction by now, so. And I admit the sizes, you might think the bladder's supposed to be bigger, and way bigger than a prostate, and in this case the prostate looks bigger than the gosh darn bladder. Couple things. Maybe the guy had an enlarged prostate, although they usually say it's about golf ball size, which that looks about golf ball size, but the bladder is very small. Maybe it shriveled up through the years, maybe it was empty when he passed, etc., or it emptied out, so I don't know why it's so small. But this is the bladder, and then this is the prostate. Beneath it, the bulgy part. Okay, more stuff is coming your way. And you might know, so if this is the bladder, and the urine comes from the kidneys above through the ureters, I always thought, or it's intuitive to think that the ureters would come in from the top. And the urine would drip in, but that's not the case. The ureters come behind the bladder, and they go into the bladder from the bottom back. It doesn't trickle in from the top. It's kind of like maybe like one of those things, a jumpy toy. It fills up from urine from the bottom, and it fills up, and it kind of blows up as, it fills up with urine. But anyway, it's filling in from the bottom, and it just kind of expands upward as it fills up. So when we look, here's that ureter. See, look where it's coming in. I know there's a couple of tubules in the way there, but look where it's coming in right there. That's the bottom of the bladder. And there's the top of the bladder, okay? And there's the prostate. These two buddies look like antennae. They're very firm. Those are the vas deferens. The end of it. The vas deferens, of course, originate down in the scrotum and from the epididymis. This is the other end. And if you're onto the male reproductive system, you should know that they come up from the scrotum in through the pelvis, then they go around like a big arch around the bladder, and that's what we're seeing here. And they come in the back, kind of like the ureters, but under into the prostate. The ureters go in the back of the bladder, the vas deferens go in the back of the prostate, which is under the bladder. Okay, so I'm going to do some things flipping on you, and so here we are. This is about the normal orientation. Here's the top of the bladder. Here's those vas deferens. We're flipping it over, flipping it over. Okay. Here's the ureter coming in. So there's the bottom of the bladder. Here's the two vas deferens coming in. They're going under the bladder. Here's the bottom of the bladder. They go under the bladder into the back of the prostate. See these two glands there? Looks lumpy and bumpy, like grapes. Anyone know what these are? They're just, so here's the bottom of the prostate. This is completely upside down now, everybody. You're looking at the bottom. Here's the bottom of the prostate. Here's those vas deferens coming in the bottom, in the back. But also you see now this lumpy thing. This is prostate. Here's the vas deferens. Then there's this lumpy, there's one here and there's another one over here. Anyone know what that is? Seminal gland. There you go, seminal gland. Makes a lot of the semen. So does the prostate. Alrighty? So, this is a lot of action happening here. And I know it's a little dirty and fuzzy and there's a lot of things in there, but again, if you knew the lecture and the theory, this would make more sense. A lot's happening in the back there. The sperm are coming in from the vas deferens during ejaculation. The sperm are coming in from the vas deferens in a rush. They're hurrying, they're moving quickly. They go in the back of the prostate, and right at that point where they come in the back of the prostate, there's these two chunky glands that look like the grapes, and they're squirting into this, also into the prostate, into this, onto the sperm, sugar. The seminal glands, I'm going to flip this over. The seminal glands, these two glands that look lumpy and bumpy, they make the sugar and inject it, more or less, secrete it, into the back of the prostate as well. And then the prostate itself, during ejaculation, is getting compressed and relaxed, compressed. It's getting squeezed during the orgasm. And it also secretes juice into the tubule with the sperm. So here's what we're seeing here is where about 95% of the semen all comes together. Sperm make up 5%. The seminal gland sugar makes up like 60%. The prostate juice makes up 30%. So almost all the semen is kind of being formulated and blended right here. Not to mention the urine part of the story, which is a little different part of the story. The bladder and the vas deferens all come together. As you probably know, the semen comes out the same tubule as the urine in a man. Not in a woman, in a man. Because the urethra comes out of the bladder, goes through the prostate, and comes out right there. That's the urethra hole. There's a little stump there. That's the urethra sticking out. So it's been chopped a little short, but urethra's on the list, and that's the urethra right there. Which would, I don't mean to be gross or funny, but the rest of the urethra would kind of come like this and go through the penis. It's been cut. But this is the very beginning of the urethra. So that's fair game for our sheep. I don't have anything else to deal with here. On the cadaver, we might see a full-fledged urethra, but we don't really see it. So whether it's urine coming out the urethra during normal times or semen coming out the urethra during ejaculation, this is where it all comes out from. There's a little valve inside of there that stops the urine during ejaculation so they don't kind of get mixed up. Most of the time the valve is open and the urine gets the right way. So we can maybe look at the list. We're reaching kind of the end of our stuff to talk about. We saw kidneys, we saw renal artery, which is attached to the aorta, we saw renal vein, which is attached to inferior vena cava. The renal capsule that you see there, we have to go back to this kidney. That's the only renal capsule that we have in front of us here. We might see a renal capsule on the cadaver, I'm not sure. There. The bladder is rather bizarrely small, right here. Maybe it gets bigger when it's full of urine. The ureters, we got two very nice ureters. The easiest thing to see on the whole specimen. The urethra, just a stump coming out of the prostate. And it's about to go out into the penis, but we don't see that. It's just this little stump right there. And obviously, maybe not obviously, in a female, the story is a little different. There is no prostate in a female, no penis. The urethra is much smaller. Maybe we'll see a female with a cadaver, but right now we don't. So, scrotum, not here, epididymis, not here, spermatocord, not here, vas deferens, yes. So that other stuff, the guy stuff, would be out here more. but we don't have that. So back here though, we do see, again, this is the tail end of the vas deferens, the tail end before it goes into the back of the prostate and merges with the urethra, which is coming from the bladder. So the urethra is coming from the bladder, from the top, and then you've got these two vas deferens coming in from the back of the prostate, and they all come together into the urethra. And whether it's urine or it's semen, it goes out at the urethra. Everything's coming together in the middle of the prostate gland. You can't really see the middle of it, but you can see where the stuff comes out.